Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Third Eye Awakening. Today I have Richard Calhoun here to talk with me about his spiritual awakening, the different stages of that, struggles and traumas, his magical life path, and I'm just so excited to get into it. We had like a quick 2-minute pre-conversation and already I'm like, yes, let's keep going. So Richard is a light warrior, an old soul, a traveler, a chef, an Eagle Scout, and a human learning to manifest miracles. So thank you so much, Richard, for being here. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy. I'm so honored to be a part of your work. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would love to just start by hearing about your awakening experience. Right before we pressed record, you were sharing your perspective on what awakening is, and it was so beautiful. I won't make you remember exactly what you said and put you on the spot like that, but you basically just said that awakening is like seeing more of the picture so that you're not just seeing one pixel, you're seeing like the picture.
Yes, it just came to me this morning before we spoke, and it was just awakening is a greater and greater awareness of awareness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of the lessons I learned more recently in the last few years was you hear this sound, like a voice, and everything you hear, you know, the birds outside, the wind in the trees, but it's like, who is hearing that sound? You know, it's just like that, just being aware of, yeah, that physical, your existence, you know? Yeah, just being.
Yeah.
So for me, my awakening started in 2012. Most watched Food Matters, then watched a bunch of other documentaries, and I just started learning more and more, and I was curious, and information started like just, you know, coming to my awareness, and I started looking into other authors, and this person mentions this person, and so I get that book and just keep learning more about like big pharma and food and these different like organizations. And so that was like a whole like I said, kind of like a loss of innocence in a way. It's like a lifting of the veil, like, oh, okay, there's actually, you know, these people don't have our good in mind. And just so that was it's also like really empowering too. So when I was a kid though, I always knew like there's like something else to the world. Like it was just like I remember being like, I think it's St. Patrick's Day, and I was like in first or second grade, beautiful blue sky. And I was leaving for school, and I was down the street. I was walking up this, going to the school, and I thought I turned. I had a feeling to turn around. I thought I saw something around the corner of my house, and I could have sworn it was like a leprechaun because it just so quick, it just like looked at me and then like vanished. So I've always been able to feel like there's something else besides our physical like reality, what we see with our five senses, our eyes. And they speak about like the light spectrum, you know, we can only see visible light, you know, this much. And so I'm just like, there's something else going on. And I always knew that because I've always had pretty good, like, kind of like intuition. And I was born into some, like, there's some dramatic experiences, kind of like, yeah, small town, kind of like, you know, lower class, just that, you know, kind of like, oh, not really like untouchable, but, you know, in America, there's like a class system. It's kind of like, it's like basically like the untouchable class. But it taught me so much like empathy, you know, my parents, it's like, even though like we didn't have much, it was still like, and then I eventually went to foster care, and I was living on a dairy farm for a while, and, you know, our home was like unfit to live in. So it was, so they had to like condemn that. And then that was like a sad, but that was like a closing of one chapter of my life. And then my teenage years, it was like, I was always kind of a rebel. So it was like, you know, adolescence was difficult for me because I was like, I didn't want to be in foster care, and I wanted to like go back. I just wanted it all to be a dream, but I had to wake up to the reality of my life. This was my situation. So I had to deal with it. So it's like a hardening of like, oh, when the going gets tough, you know, you have to stick with it. So it's like life can suck sometimes, but it taught me like beautiful like lessons through all the traumas. It's like, you have to move through things. And that magic was always there underneath all the stress of like the life happenings. I always knew there was something else, like, oh, there's something like holding all this together, there's like more to this, and so it's like those moments, those dark moments is where I found like faith, faith in God and something like bigger than I am. And then I kept continuing to have more and more like kind of synchronicities as 2012 continued. I cut out a lot of junk food, just drank like filtered water, stopped drinking like fluoridated water, other little things like that, changes my diet, nutrition, learning what a true like healthy human body is, like taking care of it, learning about all this cool stuff like goji berries and things like my parents never would have known about, And so, so I've been blessed beyond, but it's also kind of like, I can't believe I'm living this life. I can't even imagine, like I've created this for myself, but I'm also like, oh wait, no. Cause I remember I always had this feeling like, oh, like kind of like when Oprah said to Barbara Walters, she's like, I always felt like I was born for greatness. And I think we all feel that. We are just like, we know we're like that divine source that's like the mind, we can't really conceive it, but we can kind of feel it. Feeling these moments of bliss and like orgasmic joy. It's just like, there's something like, oh my God, this is something else like, happening. And it's timeless, it's eternal. It's the light, it's all there is, and the only way to know what the light is not is for there to be shadow, so that's where the shadow and like traumas and dramas and everything else comes in, because it's like that seed going through the soil has to fight through the soil to get to the light. Oh yeah, there's been all kinds of other little things I think about. Like I try not to hold on to guilt and shame. Those are challenging things and emotions. I'm like allowing myself to feel like the power of like vulnerability and emotions. And yeah, it's like it's through that vulnerability and surrender sometimes when you're listen, like I'm not in control here, as humans, like we're smart, but we're not, totally like wise.
Yeah, totally. I love what you're saying about the seed growing, basically germinating in the darkness. And I see the darkness that way too, including trauma. And, I just am on this constant, it's like an unending, not really a quest. I'm not sure what word to use, but it's an unfolding of my ability to reconcile the darkness and accept it and, choose to not become disempowered by it or corrupted by it, but find the place where it is allowed to exist without threatening me in the bigger scheme of things. And that's one of the things I've landed on too, is that it's the darkness. I don't think darkness is a fair term to apply to evil, but it definitely applies to trauma insofar as it's those environments those environments of darkness where the seed germinates, or where the caterpillar completely like liquefies its body and rearranges itself to emerge as an entirely new identity, or where a baby gestates. And I think it's just part of life where we have to go through part of human life where we have to go through these periods of darkness and trauma that suck and they really hurt and we don't want to be experienced and they don't feel good, but it allows us the opportunity to access that magic you're talking about and to feel that light coming from within rather than, always seeking it from an external source.
Yeah. And, if it hadn't been for those trials and traumas, if it hadn't been for those things, those were the most, awful experiences. I was like, I hate this. But those turned into my most precious gifts with time. In time and reflection and wisdom, it's like I say things, I've said things I've regretted, shared things on social media. And it's just like, damn it, like I'm just doing it to be like offensive, I'm trying to be like, using knowledge at the club to beat people over the head with, and just like going down like all this like rabbit holes or whatever. And just being like, I don't know I don't know if this is true, but it's like, it's like, so then, but I'm always like, well, what can I come back to? And just like find my center, like what's real for me, so then like coming back to that and just being like, well, what's my experience? And it's been like traumatic because it's like I'm thinking like, oh, what can I do? Trying to solve the world's problems. I was carrying this stuff on my shoulders for a while. But then it's just kind of like, oh, you have to like, just, you can't, worry about so many things, because it's like, then you're out of balance. You're not in the moment. You're not in love, and you're not at peace, because it's always that's eternal. And that's like, you're always moving through that. And so that's been like, it's probably one of the greatest challenges, I think, that we do, because we're constantly distracted. We're living like in the past or the future. And it's like, our whole life, like, the whole world is designed to be like that. From the moment you come in, it's like, get a birth certificate, and then it's like, they money off of that, and all these systems are just kind of like, damn, like, it's like, what the fuck? And when you realize, you're just like, oh, like, yeah, I'm fucking pissed. So I understand why, like, temple, when flipping the tables over, and like, you have defiled my father's house, like that like eternal, like, mother father, that God, that's, we're just, individuations of.
Yes.
Not separate from. We feel separate, but that's not. It's in that love and that heart center that we feel the unity, like, true unity. It's like, we're talking here from a distance, but it's like, I think about like my most dear, like my parents who are passed on now. It's like loved ones, and they're like overseas or whatever. I'm just like, oh, it's like, you're still like loving, interacting in different ways. The people I've had to kind of like, I've had to like make choices of like, kind of like, I felt like I was betraying particular people who were like family, because I had to make these decisions, to, it's like self-preservation, but it's like, it's in honor to protect myself. I have to put my own, like, if you're on an airplane, they want you to put your own oxygen on first, and so it's like, so I was battling that, one of the hardest decisions in my life. Like, do I kind of throw these people on the bus? And it's like, so that was tough. And that was another stage of growth. And that was in 2018. And then since then, it's been like 2020 was like, it's like, okay, like, Richard, okay, you wanted to ascend. You wanted to go to the next, here you go. And it was just like, boom. Cause I started reading like David Icke and all these books. I'm just like, okay, existence is nothing like I think it is. And I need to relearn everything. And then it was like, it was so hard, because it was like, okay, like, these people are like in my little apartment. I'm just like, I'm kind of felt like I was under duress and all these things, and just like, but I had to work with, like, okay, but that's one other thing. It's just like, so that was my opportunity for growth. And it my God, it was greatly rewarded, Amy. I mean, the synchronicities are almost constant every day. Looking at the clock, I speak the same words as a podcast or something. It's just like, through life and learning about like Tantra and the power of the orgasm to be like, a tool, a healing modality that Western medicine has yet to discover, just like all these things, just like, so, it's just like so many things have been like gifts for me, like, and because I've been kind of like open and surrendering and receptive, it's the information comes to me, and it's been a challenge filtering out, like, giving money to people and say, oh, yeah, they fraud, they really ex-CIA, whatever it might be. It's just like, come on. So it's like, so I've had to make choices and like boundaries, respecting my sacred boundaries. And, oh, I can tell you, no, you can't come into my space. No, you can't come into my apartment, whatever it is, learning that. And, it was a hard lesson,
Yeah. You're totally right. Those things are distractions. And it's like, I love the way that you're describing the now moment, and that like that love connection, and the separation is, it's not that it's not, it's real because it's how we perceive it. But on the other hand, our perception is limited, and that's what our perception is, what creates that sense of separation. The separation isn't the actual truth. And when you're saying those things, that to me is what the frequency of 5D is the tuning into that heart portal that takes you right into that now moment, and that feeling of deep peace and connection and love with all things, including ourselves. And I feel like that's where we're all headed. I was just saying this in my module 2 of Into the Akasha yesterday, that it's where we're all headed. But I think most of us haven't anchored it yet. Most of us are experiencing exactly what you described, including myself, where there's so much distraction in the 3 and 4D world that kind of pulls at our attention all the time, but we're learning how to navigate, and we're doing better and better all the time. And we just have to be kind to ourselves and know that we are adjusting to a whole new realm of possibility in our consciousness.
Amen. Amen. Because this is, just think of where we were a year ago, Amy.
Yeah.
March 6th, 2020. Like, I can't even tell you what have happened. Like, the memories I've made and the things that I've done. Like, 2020 was like, it was like heaven on earth for me. I got to share like, so many beautiful experiences with a beautiful human being who was like, I was just like, you're not from this world. It was just like, but we were on different spiritual paths, you see? So while we connected in so many ways, synchronicities, it was also like, oh, still see the world from this way. I spoke to him. I'm going to be on this podcast, and it's going to talk. We're going to talk about the universe, the multiverse, and then eventually in the conversation, he said, "Is this a right way?" And I was like, "Well, he still sees like in this like frame, and because like I always felt the need to share with this person. I have to change this person's mind. I have to convince." Of the way that I'm not crazy. Like, no, this is really happening. This is real. It's just, and like reality is so much like more malleable than we think it is. And
oh my God, yes.
of like, us connecting here and all of us in this kind of like great awakening community. It like, do you ever hear those Conversations with God books by Neil Donald Walton? He had a book 4 that came out in 2017. Because it said there wasn't supposed to be a book 4, but because there was a decision made on a super conscious level, something happened that we're going down a different timeline or something. So we were given a second chance essentially or something. And they say like there's all kinds of timelines happening and there's all kinds of things. And it's like we're all of it, but it's just where we put our attention is kind of like determines like that, energy flows where attention goes. So it's like we're choosing to go like this way, and if enough people choose that, so it's like it's just this thing about like I love about mass meditations and these things. It's like we can like focus your intention. It's like, oh yeah, miracles can happen. So that's I think what our next stage of human evolution is like global consciousness. So we can pray like if we don't want storms, if we want rain in this particular area, if we want to do this, we can send our focus and our energy and attention and actually change the weather through consciousness.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to say, rather than HARP, rather than like dark technology that's meant to use it and harness it like in a controlling way, it's like influencing. It's like understanding our incredible unified creative power and using that to influence our environment. It's so hard to describe. Like I've really been, this past year, I've tried a few times, especially in my Facebook group, to articulate my perception of the difference between magic and manifestation. And when I'm talking about magic, I don't mean the cool, amazing synchronicities. Like I think that shit is the best. But I mean like dark magic spells. And I think that's what it is like it's harnessing something as though there's only one reality available and manipulating the components to produce an outcome that, is desired by the person who is doing the manipulating. Yeah, versus like harnessing our ability to tap into all the other potential timelines that all exist with the beauty and the extremely valuable currency of our awareness and our attention. And that like when we flow our awareness into a potential, it comes alive because we are the magic ingredient. It's not to say that everything is inert without us. It's just we're all the same thing. We're all in it together. We can create in ways that are so much more liberating and unity supporting than we've been led to believe.
It's really just about like, that service to self as opposed to service to others and honoring that free will choice. So you could use your free will choice in essence to contract with beings that don't have your good in mind, don't have anyone else's good in mind. Because like, so you could contract with beings, whether it's in this realm or another realm, and then you're using your free will choice to make that contract. But then it's like, that's kind of also giving up your free will, I think. And so that's what we do in this world too. It's like at the moment of birth, when we don't even know, we're not even, it's like we're issued like these certificates and numbers, and these things are our existence like on paper. And it's like, but that's not like the flesh and blood, God experience that's happening, it's like, yeah. So it's like learning about all these other systems. It's like, because there are these, these, these fucking, idiots who kind of like have been, whether they're different like bloodlines and descendants, from another world or whatever, different controlling factions are trying to like keep humanity oppressed, and trying to suppress consciousness. I don't know what role, like, the earth and 3D and like the moon and all these other things, like I don't know what role all these things play, but it's like, oh, okay, maybe there's some cosmic design to like have earth as a fear farm. But then it's just like, oh, okay, once you realize like, oh, I don't like that, I'd rather not. It's like you tap into the unity, the Christ consciousness, the unity consciousness of the universe, and you're like, oh yeah, like I am like all that ever is, has been, and will be. I had this experience one night. It was beyond dream state, but I had gone to that place in my slumber of just like love, infinite love, just that whatever that state is, that ever present, existence, that light, it just is. And it's just like, that was so powerful, because it was just a reminder of like, even like through the darkest of times, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's going to be okay. It's like you go like through, and it's just now I'm learning to like, okay, laugh at these devils, laugh at these people. It's just like, it's like, yeah, you hold no power over me. It's just like, it's, we unfortunately allow ourselves to be, kind of like, I guess, controlled, whether because it's more fear of like what people think of us, or I'm just like, oh, okay. Like I fucking see you now. It's like, whether it was like, for me, it was like learning that the devil, it's kind of like this, like this aspect of it's like this, the dark side, there's like the yin to the yang to the yin, whatever. It's like masculine, but I'm learning in my own self. It's like embodying like the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And like, they are kind of like together, it's like, it's weird, like awakening for me. So those are the energies. It's like, yeah, just allowing and loving, like, I want to be more loved than I've ever been before. And just, how can I express that in every choice, interaction, word, thought, like really loving myself and coming to heart center and approaching people who might be nihilists or whatever, and just like being like entering them into my space and enveloping them with like a love. And because people, we need it more than ever, whether it's the baby crying next door or whatever it might be, just there's always like, we always could use some more love. And I like what you said before. You said there's always more to grow. There's always more of us to experience. It's like, why does the seed grow in the first place? There's something there, consciousness that wants to, expand. And like, I love pets, the idea of pets and loving pets enough, giving them an identity that we can help them. Like, did you see The Octopus Teacher on Netflix?
No,
It was so good. It's about this, it's like, does this animal dream? They're so highly intelligent, and they use different, it's just, so we think of like beings, and like, that's like our growth process, and learning about like, I love all the idea of the different densities and stuff, and evolution. It's like we're going from, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. We're just like kind of like atoms, and like we form into these, molecular, it's just, I love it. It's like consciousness.
yeah,
It's great.
it's all consciousness. And when you see it that way, it's just like so easy. It's okay. It's not always easy, but it's easier to ride the waves, ride this roller coaster that life is, because it just like, when you see it all as consciousness and see ourselves as consciousness, and like, what a beautiful motivation you just expressed, or approach to take to your life experience right now. Like, I want to be the most love that I have ever been, in every way that I can be love and express love. How beautiful. And how, what kind of world are we creating as more and more of us enter into that frequency, whether we articulate it to ourselves consciously in that way or not? I have the incredible honor of, especially right now, connecting with so many people who resonate with the concept of spiritual awakening. And they're all expressing something similar, is like an openness to exploring what we really are from a space of love and non-judgment, even if we get pulled into judgment sometimes, because we still exist in 3D and it's still something that we haven't totally worked out as humans, and that's okay. But just returning to that love base is so powerful, so powerful.
I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about like, when you think of like, the moment of like, what I was thinking about like with my partner, like when I would like orgasm when we were together, there was no, all these other differences and fights we had, all these other things like, political and all that, whatever, national, like racial, all these other issues fell away. And there was just pure love, and there was like eternity. And just like, if we could experience like that state of orgasmic bliss and joy throughout our lives, throughout our lifetimes. And, I've been blessed to have like had beautiful, like many beautiful experiences where I was just like going into awareness, been looking at a flower and just thinking about the bees, the bees who pollinate that, whatever it might be. You can go into that. You can think about, I might look at the most beautiful, precious moments of like my earliest memories, go back. One of my self-love practices is I'll go back and I'll imagine myself holding myself, the little baby, just like, okay, Richard, whatever you're going through, like I will not let anything happen to you. And going back through quantum, through time and space to that place. So even if, my younger self didn't get that, I can give it to myself now.
Yeah.
So self-love has many, like multiple depths. I've like, through Tantra, I'm more comfortable in my body. And I know, like, I don't have my Christian, like, sex is bad, like touching yourself is bad. It's like all these things. I'm like, there's no judgment. The only judgment is my own, it's whatever and so then being able to meet people where they are too. So it's when somebody's like, oh, hertz, there's this theory that 432 hertz, and I can just kind of be like, okay, if you feel that way, it's like I can meet people kind of where they are, and just be like, what I know is true for me. And it's like, even if it's a placebo effect, that's still like powerful because that's consciousness. So it's like if I think 432 hertz is good for me and I listen to it and I feel better, like who's to say,
Well, probably everything's a placebo effect ultimately. You know what I mean? Like I think yeah. I have these crazy anaphylactic allergies, and I used to have this boyfriend a long time ago who was like, it's all in your mind. And I'd be like, yeah, I think you're right. But it's like, I don't know how to access it so that I can change the extreme reactions I'm having. But like, I really do think that almost everything is a placebo effect to some extent because it requires our participation to be experienced as real. And so, yeah.
You think thoughts are like, where do thoughts come from and how do thoughts put into action? Like the only way thoughts become manifest, like this way that we're speaking now, it's like this technology, it was just a thought once, And of course, like I like to think of like different timelines, like what if Nikola Tesla's, technology had been embraced and everyone had like free energy on earth now, think of how clean our, what if like cannabis was never like, portrayed in the way it was and like called the devil's weed and all these things. Like what if, but then it's just kind of like, yeah, it sucks because I feel like I feel like you cry, in many ways. I've cried a lot this year as well. I'll be at work like sobbing and like whatever. And I'm like, but I don't care, especially on the full moons. Especially on the full moons, I was feeling things, but I knew I had to because I just like when we first went into lockdown, I was like, okay, 2 weeks, 15 days to slow spread, whatever. I'm cool. I need a vacation. I needed a vacation, so I reset and just sit here with my dog and. But then as I saw it go to 30 days to slow spread, 45 days and 60 days, like, oh, there's something else going on here. And I was initially scared. But then once I learned about it, I was like, okay, well, ACE2 receptors in the lungs are mostly where this virus attaches. And there's other things. Okay, I'm like, okay, I'll learn about this. And then I was like, oh, so maybe this is the card that, the powers that were as a last ditch effort to finish kind of like installing like global like technocracy or whatever, Mm-hmm. So I'm just, well, it's like, but I don't want to be on that timeline, so coming back to like almost like bringing heaven down here, like, okay, God, like I need some help, like, not just my will, but thy will be done, whatever. And that's like the consent of like, with the consent of the governed, kind of like the whole human, all of us together So that's why connection is much more powerful now. Going to church, celebrating whatever it is, eye contact, like that love that we see in other people now. It's like, no, stay 6 feet apart. It's
Yeah.
like, if you look at the Heart Math Institute and like the energy field of the heart's like 3 feet and all this. So it's just like, So it's like we've had to fight as light warriors, most souls, and people who see past lies. We have to fight even harder. But it's not really even a fight, I've learned. It's also just like, okay, what do I want? It's like, what do I desire? And then just sit back and stay in love, stay in the moment, and it'll come to you. And then you don't in the eye of the storm, and the storm's going around you.
Oh my God. I literally made a post last March when all of this started. I went through a huge awakening also myself in 2020, where I knew, because like also I had watched Food Inc. at some point, and I just remember knowing that the beauty industry was all kind of fucked up, and that it was like complete manipulation and just like horrible, right? So I knew that there were nefarious agents in the world, but 2020 was like very eye-opening to me. And when March 1st hit, I couldn't fully grasp what was happening, but I was started channeling all this information. I would just receive it. And one of the posts, I think it was the very first post I made on this topic, was that to stay in your power, stay in your power, stay in your calm. Remember that in this now moment, you are okay. No matter what is happening right now, you're okay. And be the calm eye of pain, because this is a virus of fear, not an actual virus pathogen, which I'm not saying it's not a real pathogen, but that, yeah, the infectious part is the fear. That's the damage.
So yeah, so true. So energetically, obviously, yeah, we can measure this new thing. And it's like, I love that about science, but it's like, are you guys really practicing the scientific method? Oh, now we have to wear 2 masks. Oh, please, please show me, like what, studies you've done to do it. It's just like, and, so that's the thing. It's like the flu kind of went away. And then the CDC and their infinite wisdom, they slowly like will alter the things, but that's not on, the nightly news, but yeah, it's so interesting how many ways like these, these jerks have tried to fuck with humanity,
Yeah.
But it's brilliant. I mean, it's fucking brilliant too.
It is.
It's beautiful. I'm just like, and that's the part of it. It's like, oh, it's darkness, it's evil. Okay, well then I'm just gonna fucking like, I can look at it and see it for what it is, but I don't want to like react to it anymore. I'll just be like, it's gonna laugh at it. Like,
yes.
Like play your games for now, but nothing can stop what is coming. That evolution is natural. That ascension is natural. It's inevitable. It's fucking nature. Like that's the whole reason. It just takes time. It might take a little bit longer. If everybody took off their masks around the world at once and said, no, fuck you, it would happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
But so that's the thing. It just depends, So I've been torn between myself. Like I want to act in love and I want to put love into action. And how can I do it? Can I do it lawfully? Can I do it through legislative? Can I do it through, what is this, quo warranto, these different things? I'm like, oh, okay, And I was learning about natural law and all these things. I'm like, so there's like the courts and all these things, like you can't walk your dog on school property. I'm like, what? Who am I hurting? Like you have to pay to park on the streets that you've already paid, like taxes already paid. It's just so many systems are just draining on us, and it's just so like realizing that, and that's another thing. It takes it's a whole paradigm shift, whether it's health, whether it's law, life. So that's the thing. I'm like, everybody's like this germ theory, like, oh, it's like we have to, sanitize everything and sterilize everything. Amy, if you had seen the house I grew up in, and then like went to a dairy farm, for crying out loud, where I'm shoveling shit, and it's like you're out in the, you're exposed to like, but that's the part of having an immune. What the fuck do you have an immune system for?
Well, exactly. Like we're all so weak, right? And so defenseless. And our immune system is so flawed that we have to always enhance it by injecting substances that we don't know what they are into our bodies. And I agree. Like as a midwife, I did house calls and home births at people's farms that, were, I would go in and I'd be like, okay, we're having a baby here. Well, all right. It's your baby, is your birth. This is your environment. But you know what? It like those babies were fine. Like, I don't know what to say. We live on this world.
Yeah, you have to go into a place of love too. You kind of have to hold back judgment. And it was like, okay, this might, like, for me, it was kind of like that was the issue of like the city council. It's like the state, well, under the age of 18, you're still kind of awarded the state. I'm in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I'm in Pittsburgh. And when I was growing up, and it's like you had to like, oh, this is unfit to live in. And there had been previous like kind of like warnings. I remember meetings where these people would come and talk to my mom, like, okay, well, if the kids miss any more school, they're gonna have to go into foster care, because we would just like stay home. And oh, Cynthia, my poor mother, she would just be like, she never had a job. She was kind of like disabled, kind of slow and disabled. And I remember once when I was a kid, she had a cane and she was walking me to school. I think I was like in first grade, and it was wintertime and she fell. I remember this feeling of helplessness. I couldn't help my mother, So in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm repaying the world. I'm like, I help, I'm a home caregiver for a beautiful soul who's really challenging me in a very physical way. She's kind of like, just a low frequency kind of human being, like judgmental, like what would be like, I mean, it's kind of fun. Like sometimes I can make fun of the news. I'm just like, whatever. But then sometimes I'm just like, I'll just look at her with like unconditional love and be like, okay, bless this being. Because if, staying in your power, yeah, that's like essentially what the one thing like I've learned about, like, oh, you are sovereign. The moment you come from your you are that, like, you are so fucking special, like that said, like, you are a fucking miracle, like it's like you were already a winner, right? Fucking out of the conception, you were the fastest sperm, got to the egg.
Yeah.
Whatever, then maybe your parents had intended to have you, maybe not, maybe you were an accident, whatever. But it's like, and I just pray that people realize that, humans are, that humans are the problem for all these, like,
No.
but it's really like we're being manipulated and our free will is being fucked with.
It's gaslighting.
We're at our very core, we are good. Humans are beautiful. We are compassionate. We care, and if there are those psychopaths, people who are born amongst us, that they're just offering us an opportunity, a reflection of who do you want to be? Okay, so we have Hitler. Do you want to be like Hitler? No. So it's like we have these people who and we get to decide to be otherwise, to be other, we want to be the light. Like, no, I don't like. So it's the thing I have to say, like, you have to do things like sometimes you regret in order, like, to know that you regret it, to have remorse.
So true. So true. Like I'll never, ever, ever offer the pretense that I am a perfect person and that I've always been enlightened and I've just, have always played the good guy in everybody's life. No, I've totally hurt people. I've done things that I regret and I feel it, but I forgive myself because I know I feel it. And all I can do is feel the impact that had on me and imagine the probable impact that had on the other people involved and just choose to never repeat that to the best of my conscious awareness henceforth. So we don't have to be perfect people in order to be perfect souls. Like I agree with you completely. We're so divine. We're so special. We are complete miracles. It doesn't matter who your parents were, where you came from, what your circumstances are. None of that means anything. You're absolutely perfect. You're needed here. You're wanted here. And we humans are not bad creatures. We're not like, we're not pests that are overrunning the earth. There is a system that's been created for us that we now exist within that has completely separated us from our original divine blueprint. And like, I don't want to go to the store and have to buy my bread wrapped in plastic, like a whole bunch of loaves wrapped in plastic, or buy all. I don't want to produce that much plastic waste. That's not what I desire. I don't desire to exist in a system where, because I have white skin, I therefore have more advantages and an easier movement through the world than people who have more melanated skin. That's not my desire. I love everybody. I want everybody to feel free and precious and beautiful and like feel their freedom and power. It's not us. We're not the source of these imbalances. It is the group of people that seek to maintain a monopoly over, the world. But again, I love what you're saying. I think they offer us the opportunity to choose. They really do. They anchor in the full spectrum of free will. and they are our brothers and sisters too. And there are things that they do that I can't condone, and my brain has not found a way to reconcile, and I don't know if it ever will. But I can accept them as my brothers and sisters, and I can accept that the oneness that is all that we may call God is so much greater than this drama we're experiencing in this realm. And yes, the awakening, the evolution of consciousness is inevitable. There's nothing they can do to hold it down. They're trying, but
yeah. So whether it's like, whether it's like full disclosure, I used to imagine like, oh, it's going to happen. Like, I used to imagine different scenarios unfolding. And it's like, but it's like, oh, okay, it's not going to happen in my time. It's not going to happen the way I think. But it's like, whatever is going to happen, it's going to be biblical. Like whatever's going to happen, it's going to be so fucking grand. It's going to be like, there are times like when I was, this last year, I feel like colors look brighter. And I couldn't tell if it was just like because I was in love or if it was because I was accessing, like if we had kind of transitioned in a way, something just like something's different. Think about time. Like I've been having such a hard time this year keeping track of time. Like what day of the week is it? It's like, it's just so it just seems like February went by slow. March went by very slow. But some of our months, like since February until like now, it's like it seems like this last week has gone by fast, so it's kind of like it's just so interesting, just but I was just going to say, yeah, like the universe rewards courage. And I think it takes individual courage to know within yourself. And I trust myself. I know myself, and I'm just really starting to really, really know myself, trust myself, and love myself. And that gut instinct, following your intuition, the gut being another brain, that intelligence, you have heart intelligence and the brain and the gut intelligence. And so when they say like follow your gut, that is like your power center, your seat, where you're kind of like you're grounded. And so like you're like, oh, here I stand. Like, don't fuck with me. So whether it's like, you could be, and it's just, it's so beautiful because it's like there's like power in that vulnerability as well, just knowing that it's like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. So I mean, for me, it's just kind of like just trying to remind people to be in the moment, and it's yeah.
it's tricky too because sometimes people, even though that's like the simplest thing that we could ever do is remember to come back to the moment, it's like sometimes people are just not available for that. They're not available to hear it. You know what I mean? Like they hear it and they're like
rejection, based off of emotion and emotional reaction,
yeah.
rather than like what is this real. And that's fine because it's like we're all individuals on our own path with our own purpose. We're born into the families we are for a reason that we may or may not find out, things that we may or may not be kind of like allowed to know. That's why I think it's so fascinating what you do with the Akasha and be able to kind of like help people out here in this realm, by accessing the memories and different things from, that other place, and I'm always fascinated by like these deeper questions I'm asking, that's a sign that I am growing. And I love like imagining like light beings, working with these different things like library, I just imagine like higher beings just kind of like so compassionate and so, and kind of like doing their own thing, and serving the, God's consciousness, life in the universe in their own way, and so it's just so fascinating to like, it's just like, oh, like how do you but it's just, but there's nothing like just like listening to like really good music too, like enjoying like incredible food here in the, so there's certain like things here in the physical realm that are also like divine.
Yes.
And mind-blowing. So it's like there's things here and like, oh my God, like look at all this like beauty around us. I was just watching David Wolf did like a documentary, I think it was like 11/11 about Iceland. It's about all this beautiful stuff, like this blue algae in a pool and like all these things. There's so much beautiful magic in our world, in this,
so much.
In the natural world. And that's what I've always been attracted to. And I've always been drawn to nature, kind of like a, like a hermit in many ways. I've always been comfortable just being alone in nature. And there I like feel like I'm with God. And I've never felt threatened or like kind of scared. I've heard like stories of people, who go into the woods and like they disappear and these different things, whether it's like on federal grounds, whatever it might be, and these different things. So I understand there's like so much that we don't know, so much, but then once you have faith and you enter into that like higher realm of love and consciousness, it's like, oh yeah, like you're kind of like that's your faith has to be challenged, but it's also like once you realize that there's nowhere to go, it's like there's nowhere to go because it's like you are the light. That's all there is, so no matter what, no matter what hell you go through in your lifetime, you got to get through it and you'll come back,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I love what you just shared, that beautiful reminder to all of us about the physical world, that like we can perceive it as a prison that keeps us stuck here because we can feel so disempowered as we go through those hellish experiences of darkness and trauma and the pain but even the pain that we have access to as an experience on earth, I really believe, based on my forays into the Akashic records, that from the soul perspective, that pain is such a novelty. It's like an exquisite flavor of ice cream that is just like also divine, like completely divine for us as humans, because we identify with it so deeply. We feel like it's awful, but it's the option of even being able to experience it is such a rich joy to our soul. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's, like you said, there's so much beauty on this environment in 3D and 4D is so rich. It's not a prison. It's an absolute wonder. And even as we change that perspective, we return to our sovereignty and become so liberated, and we can, unsubscribe from all the manipulation and programming because it's all mental programming. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's fear. It's all impregnated minds from birth. We might be born in a traumatic experience, and it's nothing but, there's not lots of like love, and trust in that, so that can be difficult. But there is like that beauty in coming home to that inner God, that inner wisdom. And it's like you're watching a movie. Life is a movie. Imagine just sitting in a theater and you're just looking at the screen like, oh my God, and just gonna have fun with it and be like, oh, like, I imagine myself kind of like going outside, interacting with others, and I see that. But I'm like, I'm creating my own reality. Life is what you make of it. Yeah. So you can be afraid, you can live in fear, you can live in fear, and God be with you, if you choose to do so, but it's going to be a hellish experience, I remember like first time I took acid, I remember going to the park and just staring up at icicles, underneath the icicles, without a thought of them. Like I wasn't afraid the icicle's going to fall and like impale my
piercing your eye.
It was the most beautiful day of my life. I talked to a state police officer who was driving through. I had my shirt off, getting some sun. He's like, it's 55 degrees. I was like, yeah, but I was in a state of love, even though I was doing like these questionably illegal things. The fucking world just kind of moves around you. Yeah. Creating a love space in that heart center, it's like a toroid. It carries you through time and space, and you then begin like in your sovereignty, and then the universe responds, because then once you're like, your thoughts passing through your mind, you're aware of them, and you're here, it's like, oh, I don't like that judgment I'm holding, or I don't like that feeling, so I don't want to feel it anymore. I like acknowledge, like the guilt and fear and shame that I felt, the anger that I felt, the betrayal that I felt, the atrocious things I've said, all that. I acknowledge that, my darkness, the things I've done. I say karma as like kind of like a balance, kind of like a scale. It's like kind of like, okay, well, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So I kind of think of it as like, okay, like you can kind of pay if you, it's all about free will too. It's like if you decide to like maybe, and, I've tried to like take my own life a couple of times, and I realized if I do, I'll have to just kind of like come back because there's something I'm not figuring out yet. That was a part of my reality. I believed that. So, when the second time, like tried to like drown myself in the river, I was lifted out in a way. And there was just like, there was no after near death experience, but it was kind of light I saw, And then I realized, okay, like, fuck, I'm in it now and I have to stay with this. And that was like the great awakening sort of for me, beginning in 2018. And it was like a friend of mine who's a medium said higher guides came in and took the place of your other guides because you're on like the next, like you're on some greater like kind of a challenge. And so, I've had to like, kind of cry some nights just because like I'm praying to, like, I had a dream of my father when he was a small child almost. And it was just like the innocence that I saw in his face in that dream was something I'd never seen in him in real life. And it reminded me of like, oh, I saw a lot of myself in that. And so coming back to that love, like, oh my gosh, my mom and dad tried their best, but they couldn't do enough. And then like these other beautiful people who were like also my parents gave me so much love and taught me the value of hard work and all this stuff. And being on the farm and having to like, eat a hamburger and then like be like, oh, this was like a cow that I knew. This was like, a being that so just like, so I've had such surreal experiences to teach me of the realness of life. So just been like, so I know that life is a gift. I know life is precious, and I try not to have too many opinions and judgments and things to hold on to, but just be with the experience and imagine everybody else as another aspect of self, just another kind of personality of mine or whatever, trying to step oneness. But oh girl, it's tough sometimes.
It is because I think like the trick of the 3D realm, 3D, 4D realm is that because it's so rich and exquisitely, I don't know, it's just flavorful and it's like visually stunning. It's so then it becomes kind of bewitching and beguiling, and it's so easy for us to really really identify with all of those experiences and the things we're interacting with physically and emotionally, and that's the challenge. But I think also that's like, I honestly have found in the Akashic records that that's the fun of becoming, like, coming to incarnate in this place as a human, is like, it's a challenge. You can forget who you are, and you might not remember for your whole entire life, but that it's okay because you'll always reemerge back into source. And the only real danger that I see, even with all of the craziness that's going on, is that I don't see that you can actually lose your soul for real for all eternity. I just see that you can go farther down the road of mind manipulation, that you have lost your soul, or like believing that you're uploaded to, like, the Borg mind or whatever, however you want to imagine it. But ultimately your soul is God. It, like, they don't have power over God. That's the whole point.
I love that about like the light. There's nothing but the light. The light is there is. The light simply is, and that I was blessed to have that experience too, just coming out of a kind of dream state where just a nice little reminder. But also I've been fortunate enough to always kind of have that knowing too, always been kind of like innocent and precocious, and I've mostly been able to hold on to that, and that's a real gift.
Yeah, it seems like you're able to hold on to it, even though I'm sure, like, we're just scratching the bare surface of what your life experience has been. I'm sure that there have been like many varied ups and downs, but it seems like you've done a beautiful job at holding on to that innocence and that precociousness and that connection to the light. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It's been it's like, yeah, it's just been a blessing, and I just think of that, I'm just like, all right, God, like, let me just do like your will. I'm here for the experience, but I also want to like kind of be able to exercise my free will too, and desire as this being known as Richard Calhoun, like this aspect of consciousness. Like, what can I bring with my experiences in particular favor? But yeah, it's awesome to think about, like, we have to step into like the flesh suit in this realm on this planet in order to experience the visceral reality, to have a body, to feel emotions, to do things with a body. It's like, oh, okay, well, how do you treat your body? It's like, do you take care of it? So it's like I could like exercise more. I wish I could do more like yoga and certain things. These are areas of improvement, and if I desire with the right motivation, it's like, and just being like, oh, take care of yourself for yourself, not for not for anyone else. just for you.
Yeah. Totally, 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 totally. Oh, Richard, this has been such a beautiful conversation. I feel the heart connection. It's like, it's really time and space are not things. We connect, yeah.
Yeah, because I just immediately like resonated with everything you were saying when I first heard you speak. I thought like, okay, this it's when you find people, like yourself that remind me like I'm not crazy. I don't have to believe in somebody else's reality. I don't need to be anything for anyone else. You know, person I love is like, well, maybe you should see a psychiatrist, I'm like, what are they gonna tell me? What are they gonna tell me? Take
Yeah.
some drug. Do you think I'm like deficient in some kind of pharmaceutical? Come on, I'm just like, no, I've had hellish experiences, psychedelics, I allowed myself, but also heavenly experiences too, where I took mushrooms this summer and it felt the whole, like the whole world is made for me, the whole universe. It's like, you are the whole experience. And the only way you can know it is if you're here experiencing it. How would you know what life is if you weren't here? Right? It's just like, you're hearing me, right? So like somebody else is, but who is that? Who's listening, right? It's just kind of like if a tree falls in the forest, no one's there to hear it. It's like if life exists and nobody's there to live it.
That's right. It's true.
It's like we're all a little bit of God, a little bit of God, just like everywhere, everywhere.
Yes,
Even
exactly.
if even if it's, the darkest, most wicked, terrible thing, there's still, an aspect of consciousness. They're still a part of God, experiencing, the most extreme self-interest, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. And that makes me really happy to know that when you heard me speak, you were like, oh yeah, I'm not crazy. So like that was the whole motivation for starting this podcast. And full disclosure, when I started it, I felt very wobbly in my own confidence. For everybody who is thinking of starting something of their own, just don't wait until you feel confident, because if I had waited, I still wouldn't be doing it. I just had to go first and let it grow and let my confidence, relax into it. But this is all I wanted, was to create connections with other people who similarly were having beautiful or interesting or unique experiences, and hear their perspective and just connect with each other so that we don't feel so alone and crazy and alienated.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for manifesting this miracle. It's so good to see you and talk to you. It's just, it's just, oh, it's a blessing. Thank you.
Likewise, likewise. I hope that I'm so appreciative of your time. I hope that everybody enjoyed this. I'm sure you did, because it feels like one of the most heart resonant conversations I've had in a while. So thank
And
you.
I love you all who's listening. Much love to you.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who's listening, for your beautiful, precious attention. Richard's social media, I think, wait, hold on, let me check. Yes, his Instagram is in the show notes. So if you liked this episode, send us a message privately if you don't want to screenshot yourself listening. Just send us a little bit of love or comment on one of our posts and let us know that you listen. That really makes our hearts feel great. But otherwise, even if you don't do that, I still appreciate your attention so very, very deeply, truly much. And I hope you have a beautiful day or night wherever you are. And I will catch you on the next episode, guys. Hello, beautiful soul. Thank you so much for listening to Third Eye Awakening. If you love the show and you want to show me some support, as well as get some rich and awesome extra content, then you can support me through Rockfin or Patreon. It really goes a long way to help me create Third Eye Awakening and keep it free for everyone and ad-free, because isn't that nice? Isn't it so nice to listen to a podcast without any ads on it? I feel like it is. No shade to anybody who puts ads on their podcast, but I just love creating content and I love having ad-free content. So in order to do that, I've created a Rockfin account and a Patreon account with all kinds of juicy conversations and solo rants and riffs and sort of trainings on spiritual topics, metaphysical topics, just cool shit to anchor in some of that multidimensional light consciousness and expand your mind. Thank you always so much, whether you choose to support or not. It just means the world to me to have you listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me on this episode. I appreciate you more than my words could ever say. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you on the next episode.